Okay, thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Jan. Great introduction. Diplomas well covered. We're going to come back to some of that stuff towards the end of this talk and answer more of your questions. But one thing we wanted to do is really look at everything we've achieved over the year and some of the things you might have taken part in, some of the things you might have missed, and how you can access them moving forward. So we're going to look at a year in review. So it's a perfect time. It's a perfect time to get ahead and get ready for diplomas, for the internships, by revisiting some of the work you may have missed, catching up on things that have been revised over the time we've been doing the course, and just getting yourselves all set for the year ahead. So in 2025, in January, of course, we started off on the 7th, and we will probably come back at some point around there in 2026, the 7th of January, and we showcased everything that we were working on, everything that we were going to be doing, all of the great externals that we were working with, helping them make content in new areas of the course so we could broaden the course with more production, more community, more marketing, and just so we can really take students on a complete game development journey. And then the big thing that Matt and I were working on, we'd finished the breakout introduction to Unreal module 2 at the end of last year. And all this year we've been working on the first person shooter. The first person shooter will debut in January. First of all, you have to make the first person shooter, and then you have to make or decide how you're going to talk about how you made it. And then you have to kind of make all the videos that showcase that process. And we are well down that road now. We've just finished basic weaponry. I think it's video 6. So like we will start 2026 with an enormous drop of our best content yet for people that are interested in practical game development. And we will come back around about the 7th of next year to outline all of that. And then the week after that, we had one of our better AI talks, not that we've had any suboptimal ones, but we had Jim McDonald from Outfield, who has got a really good, positive, socially worthwhile usage for AI. If you remember that talk, if you went to it, he uses drones and AI technology to increase the yield from fruit farms exponentially without damaging the environment, because he just can get so much data on each individual tree that the farmers, rather than having to kind of a pesticide a whole field or a whole farm uniformly, they can tailor to each individual tree and increase the yield without damaging the land or the plant. So it's a real up AI story. And the other interesting thing about his talk, and it is available within our bonus sections online, is he really went not only to talk about AI, he went not off piste or into a different direction, but he really started talking about entrepreneurship and funding and setting up a company, which then triggered Jan and myself to really double down on that as one of the threads of the work we do this year, which you saw in the culmination of the autumn school, where everybody filled in Amy's deliverable about making a really serious convincing business pitch for your idea. So it's a really good talk. He's a really good speaker, very open and warm, and a real friend of the organization, our organization. And like I said, yeah, it triggered that interest in creative business and new course dev for us in the year. And then on the 21st, we did a talk, a very, very advanced level talk, design as a guiding principle. And this was something I'd been working on for a long time, and something that I'd been moving towards in my thinking a lot in the last kind of 4 years of, like, really heads down development. That good design methodology that you'd employ in a game really maps brilliantly to production, to engineering, and that, like, fundamentally, everything is just about good design. And the good thing, I think, for part one and part two, which we did later in the month, is it's the culmination. It's the culmination of the kind of complete designer modules. And next year, I'm going to turn it into an official module that you can study online. But in advance of that, all of the material is available within our bonus section. Again, if you want to get ahead, if you want to understand the latest thinking that we have, that could be very useful if you want to communicate with us, say, next year about internships and what we believe and how we think things should be done. So I was really proud of that. Certain things over the year, it's been fun for me to look back and see some of the things that I thought worked really well, and some of the things that we just took some learnings from. And like I say, it was the culmination of the complete designer design track. That's what I felt when we released it. And then in February, we had Deepen come in. She was midway through preparing and working on her her official content for the business and production track, which is online and up right now. And you can build an entire project plan around the work that she gives and the guidance that she gives. And the fun thing for me is, as I was working with Deepen, because she's on the production side, and her talk, the one online and the one she gives as part of her module, was all about taking a brief, taking an idea from a client or a stakeholder, as we had been doing for about 4 years at Dreams, where a client says, I've got this idea, I want this, and I've got this much money, can you make it happen? And then people like Deeper and creative directors jump on and work it all out. And the fun thing for me is, if she was like, well, I need some client briefs. I'm doing the talk about how to break it down, but I need the thing to break down. And so she said, like, will you provide some briefs so that I can break them down? So Matt and I had to very, very quickly, over the course of an afternoon, design some project concepts for her that she could analyze. And the fun thing was, the criteria for the design was that they had to be analyzable. They had to have kind of clear elements that she could break down, and then a student themselves could break down. And so we came up with two concepts, one for her talk, which was vampires versus zombies, and one for the students doing her assignment, rescue force, which then the student would have to break down. So it was a really enjoyable thing for me and Matt, and really kind of triggered a phase of us designing and concepting and going through a new wave of projects that we want to do as well. And that's one of the best things I say to Jan about this work, is when Matt and myself, when we get learnings from the things we are teaching, and when we get inspired by things that are happening that then goes into our own practice and our own game development. And then we had, coming back to what Jan was saying about the diplomas, we've been testing and trialing these things out over the course of 2025 to kind of get them set up with kind of pilot schemes. And we had Christoph, didn't we? He came on the beginning of February to show his project about gamifying work and chores in an interesting way, and it was his BA thesis presentation, which he got a really great pass for, and then it went into the next stage of his career, which we were really pleased about, and he came in and presented to everybody. And one thing that Jan and I like about this type of presentation is it's very clearly someone taking just the next step. So to any student on the course, if I'm giving a talk, it's more about like, this is my experience, hard won experience over a lifetime of making games. And so we love to get the person that's just one step on. I've just done my BA thesis presentation, or like we'll see in a minute.
Can I comment?
Like, yes, of course you can. Yes.
Christoph got into the Denmark's best university, Copenhagen ITU University, thanks to this work. So we helped him to get through that process.
And this is how we envisage the diploma working for a lot of you, that it becomes that key stepping stone into the next phase of your career. And then later in the month, Nick did his sound design for video games module, and he gave his lecture to support and promote that and highlight that. Gave a really great lecture. It's still online. You can watch that, and after you've watched that, it's a really convincing case to actually study his sound design module. And we got another friend of the course for us, Paul Weir. He did a whole lot of content for Nick that, you know, goes through his sound design course. So it was a great piece of content, and really it featured a lot of small animations, and the presentation was strong, and it really pushed like that fun competitive, you know, other people came to me and said, I'm going to put an animation in my presentation now. You know, it's good fun. And then another new thing for us, we started engaging with you a little bit more. And March, we ran the Psychedelic Gaming Survey for 2025. We ran it twice. We ran it in conjunction with a company that wanted to ask some questions to a gaming audience. And that was good because they sponsored it. And so we had some prizes, which obviously is just fun. It's gamified. It engages the audience. And we got some really interesting kind of learnings that then sparked my interest, and really that it came around later in the year when we looked at the gaming personas in the autumn, which I will come to later. But you know, you can see, you know, some very interesting data. You know, PC so in the ascendance amongst our audience, and much more than it used to be, like even 20 years ago. Yeah. And you know, you can see console, you know, small by comparison, and you know, VR still in a, you know, a real kind of struggling space. And then intent to, you know, where is it going? You know, if you look at like what our students own and where they're going, you can see the PC is still really strong. And it's great to get those learnings and share those learnings for when we and you are thinking about, you know, who are we going to target, where are we going to go, you know. Also great to know that some people spend more. I should have had the key here, but you know, how many hours a week do you spend gaming? And then which of these games are you looking forward to the most? And where is your preference for big budget indie, or just, as we're seeing more and more, our audience, and I think a wider audience, are really quite eclectic and in their taste, and will jump from the biggest blockbuster to the smallest indie if it triggers their interest. All of this data is online, and we share it. We shared it on the Discord, and you know, we have no problem sharing it again if people are still interested. And we will run it We will run it again, a very similar survey at the beginning of next year, because it's just a really fun way to engage as a community. And you can see RPG very, very strong. Used to be much, much weaker, yeah, but like, you know, strong. Boomer Shooter still there. We will do the Psychedelic Game Survey 2026, and there will be prizes just for fun. I think we gave away 4 Steam cards that, you know, you were entered a draw for anyone who took part in the survey, and yeah, it was a good fun exercise for us. And then in March, another one of those next step roadmap talks. We had Normo Games in again, talking about how they're getting on, the games they're making, where they're getting funding, and the next steps they're taking, where they're having problems and where they're having successes. Very popular talk, because again, it is that next step. And like, you can imagine, can't you, if you next year, say, do an internship with us, or you do a diploma project that involves somebody else, and before you know it, you're doing a project with somebody, you make something, and maybe it even finishes, and 1-2 years later, you're a small group, you are Normo Games V2, and you know, your career, you know, is underway. And a week later, we had Olive again, showcasing her journey, the struggles she'd had, where she'd had success. And again, she makes, like, as to that question early on, she makes a board game, but it's still a game with gameplay and rules and graphics and social interactions. And, you know, we have no problem if somebody wants to do a board game or a card game as part of their diploma. I mean, I've talked about, I've done, I did the card game in a break from making digital games, just purely for fun. And it was a great experience that enriched my notions about making conventional games. And then also in March, we released like a whole wave of the complete designer content. And this was all born out of the desire. I spoke to a lot of people I really respect in the industry, and I thought about everything that ever frustrated me and everything I'd always wanted a designer to know when they were on my team, and the information, like, I wish they had ingrained at day one of their career, or that they could easily grab. And so we went right back to the very origins of play. What is it and why do we do it? Yeah, and then how does that evolve, and you know, how is it utilized in the subset of play that is games? And then we had a lot of people ask about it. We did narrative in games, again going right back to the very evolutionary origins of why humans tell stories. And then from those two, we broke down the very, very core fundamentals of like gameplay, game mechanics, game features, game state. And again, we were really, really proud of the content here. And, you know, it's been very, very well received. And as I said, the design as a guiding principle, I think, is one of the culminating modules around all of that work. And like origin of playing games, you know, we took the student through all, like, for example, the 16 play types in early child development. And you know, why is that important for us to know? Well, the little kid here on the branch that is being obscured by the label He's involved in deep play, which is basically throwing yourself off that branch and seeing if it hurts. Deep play is no one's looking, so you stick your you stick your finger in the candle flame to see if it hurts. Yeah, it's testing out the rules of the universe that you live in and finding those boundaries. And it's very, very anarchic. And so from that, you know, at least in this model, a 16th of play is chaos, disruption, and anarchy. And that's why games experiences that have that within their DNA to some extent can be very, very compelling and escapist for an audience. Yeah. And so learning all of these fundamental things can make you a stronger, deeper, more socially connected developer. And then, yeah, and when we looked at how those little kids evolve and grow through play to become these adults in very sophisticated, structured types of game experience. Yeah. And you could add there, like the couple here at the bottom, you know, this group here, you know, they're playing some sort of cardboard game, and, you know, they're esports, you know, so, you know, all of these different types of game have, you know, roots that are very, very interesting to explore. And like we had that phrase, us apart, but together. And then, oh, sorry. And I'll flip back. And then if you are a fan of It, the movie, or It, Welcome to Derry, yeah, and you don't want to have anything that approximates to a spoiler, look away now, and then I'll clap my hands and say you can look back. Okay, and so 3, 2, 1, look away now. And then in the narrative talk, we unpacked and tried to break down the components that make a story really, really massively compelling, and why as humans we are, you know, compelled and thrilled and, you know, respond to stories as a structure. And the reason some people are not looking at the screen or have their eyes shut is like, you know, I just couldn't help but use this. This is one moment in the culmination of It, Welcome to Derry, which concluded on Monday. And, you know, it just embodied like every compelling and mythic and old, you know, good versus evil, might versus, you know, weakness, and, you know, fear versus commitment. And, you know, it was a fantastic sequence in a slightly confused overall narrative. But also for anyone who likes animation, and it was an awesomely constructed animation sequence as well, which I've only got 2 slides from, so I didn't want to ruin it for anybody. So, but like in the narrative in games, in those modules, we try and break down all of the components that make that moment in that piece of cinema totally thrilling. And you can look back now, you can be back in the room, we are on a different slide. Okay. And then in April, I spend some of my time trying to get the people that I think are just the best in a certain area to give the best information, the people that are better than me in an area, to talk to you. And obviously one of our rules is they have to be practicing designers, engineers, artists, and so they can tell us what it's like now in the industry, or in their industry. So we've been working with Nicole and working with Lego to get her to give a talk and make some content. And she did. She gave a brilliant talk on the kind of really high level principles of design. And then that talk we couldn't record it because Lego are, you know, very kind of big and rightly very sensitive about their brand. And so the talk couldn't be recorded. It went out live, but the content from a lot of the content then went into her module that's online that you can study. So one ECTS module, and she just will give you a great grounding in brilliant principles of design. And again, we were really proud of that content. And then we had another kind of talk about building businesses in games from room 8. And the reason I put this slide up there is, you know, after we've done our first and second wave of internships, we may very well be reaching out to other companies like this. And then Jan, towards the end of April, he gave one of his best talks that I think is a genuinely really interesting talk that a lot of people, if they missed it, should grab it from the website and, you know, sign up just for Christmas, and then just grab, you know, at all of the bonus content. And this is about the Gartner hype cycle, and Jan had transposed it to game development, and very interesting, very useful, like when to innovate, at what point on the curve to be, when to be a first follower rather than an innovator, seeing those kind of waves of market adoption and how trends pick up. You know, it was a very interesting talk, and one of the kind of high points of the content that Jan delivered this year. And then in May, just because we really like it, and we had a gap, somebody pulled out of a presentation because of work commitments, and so we wanted to do something that we could jump into. And I think GTA had just been, or it had not long been delayed yet. It was in the ether, it was on everybody's minds. And a lot of I think the first trailer had just come out. And so I said, look, I'd jump in. I'd love to talk about GTA. I love GTA. And it's the favorite game of the students. So let's do that. And so we looked at the origins of GTA, all of the different versions of GTA, how it's developed, how it's become the beyond AAA cultural kind of behemoth that it is right now. And, you know, we looked at the new characters, what we know about the new characters, you know, theories about what the narrative will be. And we looked at the incredibly expansive world and the different locations within those worlds, and, you know, some of the mooted gameplay. And, you know, it just looks like an epic of just vast dimensions. You can see why it's taken over 12 years to make the game, and why, like, yeah, delay it for another 6 months if that's going to mean that it delivers at an incredible quality. Yeah, but like, it looks like you can just spend half your time having a holiday, either scuba diving or, you know, wandering and hunting in the national park. So yeah, it was, again, it was a good talk, and I think we had a big discussion around the game, and it was a really fun evening. And then just like everything is design, and design is a fundamental principle, with Matt, I started trialing some of the new wave of content that will be coming in 26 as talks in kind of prototype or kind of beta versions, and to start the kind of process for where we want to go with some of the engagement we want to have with the audience. I did the secrets of great level design, and we looked at the musicality of a level and the kind of structural shape of different levels with, you know, what you're trying to achieve and the emotional impact you're trying to have on the audience. And we looked at a classic original Doom level, broke it down into key structural moments and beats, and then we retransposed those to 2016 Doom, and then actually the Dark Ages, and saw how, even though the games have evolved in many ways, that those structural kind of beats and kind of principles were still absolutely being used. Yeah. We released another module in May, the module 22, teams and opportunities in game development. And then in June, we did part 2 of level design, only because it takes, you know, it just takes Matt and myself, you know, X amount of time to prepare the content at the quality we want. And, you know, like I said, and like I was just saying, we broke down you know, some classic levels, you know, to the, you know, vantage points, waypoints, unknown boundaries, and, you know, the points of interest, breadcrumbing, you know, and like, you know, really good things that you might miss, like the reverse and the twist, which is a great moment to have in any level, where you let the player build their mastery and their sense of control and power, and then you pull the carpet or the rug away, and you put them down again, yeah, so they're under pressure, and everything they thought they knew is not what they knew, yeah, and it creates a great dynamic within a level, yeah. And we will turn that into modules in 2026, and then another one of like the McCall and the deeper talks. We managed to get Cameron Thomas from Amazon Gaming to talk about his career. You know, he has worked on Sea of Thieves with Rare, then he went to Minecraft, and now he's the European head of Amazon Games. King of Meat was one of the many games in his kind of community portfolio. And not only did he give the brightest presentation from the brightest room ever, but, you know, it was an amazing talk he gave. And again, it was a great precursor to his content on, you know, building and activating communities, which is on the IVGC Plus right now. And then we had the second part of the gaming survey, a few more questions. And then in July, we had so many new students coming to the course who, and like when we started, we'd get a new student and there'd be two or three modules, and it was very easy and clear, like, oh, just start at number 1 and then go to number 2. And like, you know, we have so much content now that we sometimes hear from students saying, you know, where do we start? What's the best way in? What, you know, how should I approach things? And so we started the Accelerate program, where we help and guide new students through earlier modules, answer their questions. We give live lectures, and it's been good. And it's been good for Matt and myself, because it means we return to a topic and we update it. Like, we updated everything for 2025 last year. I think we have one module in module 1 that we're working on in January, due to kind of bring that up to its latest level. But like everything else, we've been really updating. And so it was a chance for us to go back to some of the theory modules and update those as well. Yeah. So we did AI for games. We did introduction to production. We did the history of video games. We did innovation in games, data analytics. And they went down really well. All the new students really responded to them, and a lot of you will know we ended up doing Accelerate on a Tuesday and New Lecture on a Wednesday. So more and more we're thinking about, like, if you're a new student, you need this. If you've been with us for X number of years and you're still engaged, you need that. Yeah, and so we're thinking of this kind of the overall lifetime of a student, from having a first interest in games to being a professional games developer with a released product on your CV. That's the line that we want to take as many people on as possible. Yeah. And that level design stuff we just done earlier culminated in the Cypherdelic Level Design Challenge, the summer challenge, where students took those principles and that guidance. I made a test level, and it's around here somewhere, and we asked students to design a level on paper. Matt and I, we met up and we were like, okay, you could build it in 3D, but, like, we like the discipline of going through it, slowly and cleanly, without the technical hassle of how you're going to build it. Literally, anyone can use a pencil and a ruler and a rubber. Yeah. And it was great. It was great. And we started and ran that challenge, and we got some great student content, and we'll come to that in a little bit. And then in August, we ran the summer school, where we used the Accelerate modules to give people a grounding, and we took people through a whole week of learning, and individuals and groups, they presented a game concept at the end of the week, didn't they? It was great fun experience for us. Yeah. And again, an indication of more that we want to do in 2026. And then the week after that, we went on holiday. Yeah. And had a week off, and it was great. And then we had we came back, had the awards, and Matt and myself, we went through all of the designs. And I won't go through them all in great detail, because some of you will be here, some of you might have contributed these, but we were really pleased and impressed with the inputs we got from people who took part in the challenge. And we had ones that where the illustration looked simple, but when you read the supporting text and you put the two things together, you got something that was clearly fun. And you could work out the level was going to be fun. We got things where whole societies and the history of a society were mapped onto a world. From this one from Chemo, it had, like, the lines of where the war had been and where bits of the city had been destroyed, and it was a really interesting level design. And then we had people who really, broke down cleanly and clearly, on a very kind of small micro level, where the enemies were placed and, what the movements were. Yeah. And then we had people who had a much looser approach. And, but, like, Matt and I would play through them, almost sometimes moving, little dice around the map here. And we thought this was great fun. Some really fun levels. This level, like, the draftsmanship is quite basic, but the play within it is quite excellent. And the objectives, the obstacles, the bosses, you could see it working really well. And then some people really, went to town on the storyboard, like Sovi, and it was great, really good fun. And then we had the judging ceremony, and very nice level design, very nice 3D construction there. Very cool kind of level up in the sky. Very nice idea behind that one. And very well presented there. Look at that. And again, another good level layout there. Very well done. And then we had we had commended. We thought everyone done really well. We had commended, and then we had the winner that was Ilias, where it was a very, very well thought through, well described level. And I think the thing that shaded Ilias was that he thought about how the different game system mechanics integrated into the architecture of the space. And so, yeah, we were very pleased with that. And then, so how is that going to lead into 2026? We're going to build some things in our next set of challenges. I haven't decided yet whether we'll do another design paper-based challenge for newcomers and then do a building in 3D separate challenge, or whether they'll run alongside each other in parallel, or Matt and I are going to figure that out over the holidays. But you can see there on the left, that is our 3D level construction guidelines. The red and the green boxes represent jump heights and jump distances, and ramp angles, and using that kit, we are hoping that many of our students can then jump on board and realize one of their levels in 3D. And we've been piloting that and testing that out over the autumn. And on the right there, you can see one of our students, Jenny, has taken the that kit, and she's built a version of actually it's of the level that I put forward for the level design challenge. So it's been great fun just to test this out as a process, and we're going to roll that out next year. Then we had some other new modules. We had Amy. If you went to the autumn school, you know what her module is all about. Her module is online. And then, like I said, we had the gameplay, game mechanics go live. And then September, I took the chance to start thinking about new modules that we want to do. And we want to do some more stuff on marketing. And we did a talk, or I gave a talk on player personas. Who are the players, different types of players, what do they want, what drives them? We're all, different people game for different reasons. Some kind of more socially, some for an in-depth narrative experience, some for escapism, some for competition. And we broke down some, first of all, we looked at some existing models like the Newzoo breakdown of gamers. You can see there into kind of ultimate gamers, enthusiasts, time fillers, bargain buyers, community gamers. It's not my favorite model, to be honest. But then I started building mine of 50 bigger, more in-depth gaming personas, and we'll come back to that. And we had a really good talk, didn't we? People had some really good ideas they put forward. And the reason that that Lego is on the left is we were very clear at the beginning of the talk that all of these personas, just like that is not really Jurassic Park, the latest movie, it's a Lego set model depiction of that movie. All of these personas, they are models of things in the real world rather than being totally encapsulating of a specific individual. And then we looked at games of the future. What's out in the market now, what is coming soon, what things do we think are going to be really good. I only included 2 in this slide. Hurdlings, which is out now and is a really, really fun game from a really good games company, and The Last Night, which looks incredibly good, but I think it's been in development for about 12 years, and so it is a game of the unreachable future. When will it come out? I'm not sure, but I can't wait. And then we built on our AI strand. Like, students have been asking us, but what can we do with AI in games? Is it scary? Should we use it? What do we think of it? What is it genuinely good? And so I gave a talk where I really pushed actually the boundaries of testing and running things live in front of an audience, because I don't know whether you went to this talk or not, but we had like 3 or 4 AI tools running simultaneously, and like, you know, I'd be having one working on one piece of software while talking about another piece of software, hoping that that one would come and, you know, produce the little dwarf by the time I finished talking about the one that was then going to run its own piece of AI. But it was a fun talk, and I think the conclusion was for kind of prototyping and for ideation, and that it's, you know, it's quite a good tool, and the jury is still out whether we would use it for full development. I'm not sure that I would right now, but it is something we'll come back to in 2026, because it's a massively fast evolving field, as we clearly saw from Andrew's talk just yesterday. Then we ran Accelerate for a second time, and then another thing we've done is some of the more academic talks we came back to as part of the Accelerate program, and to kind of bring them to life, we rather than just asking you what your favorite game was and the game you're playing now, we went out as just a real piece of fun and connection. We went out to our network and we found out what they think. Yeah. And, you know, we found, you know, the games that people were playing right now, and we found their favorite games of all time, and why they like them, and, like, you know, and how some of our community, some of our kind of experts, you know, like play very, very different games for very different reasons, because, you know, they want to socially connect and interact with the members of their family, and, you know, the things that, and the reason they really like these things are very interesting. Like, why does Amy like the spelling bee? Because she can master it. She's a mastery gamer. Yeah, she can be the best, or at least I am the beep beep queen bee of the spelling bee. Yeah. And you know, it was a real fascinating exercise in you know, seeing what, you know, what of the people we really respect, what are the games that really drive them on and make them want to, you know, keep making games themselves. Yeah. And again, like Andrew, a bit like Deeper, you know, he's got a very clear reason he plays that game, because he can connect with his daughter through it. Yeah. And obviously, you know, he's a PlayStation man through and through, as we found out yesterday. And, you know, so that's one of his favorite games too. And it was a deeply fascinating exercise, wasn't it? Pete there, he spends a lot of his career making the incredibly high resolution, sophisticated dinosaurs of the Jurassic World games. And so, like, it's understandable. Like, at the end of the day, making a really, really high res dinosaur, he might go and play a really old retro game. And it was an exercise I think we will engage with again. And it was very useful in allowing us to kind of reach out and connect with people who may be in positions to help us with our internship program. And yeah, Lee from last month's talk, great kind of Doom head and 2D shooter guy, and, like, you know, very good mix. Yeah. And then we looked at innovation, and we built a talk around that to go with that module that will connect with that module when you start that. And then we had a spare week, and somebody challenged me to do a talk on kind of art history, what we'd done for the complete designer, what would you do for a complete game artist, what would you tell them about, like, you know, art history. And someone set me the challenge of going from the very first piece of art to the latest piece of art. I got to the very beginning of film as a medium, didn't I? So, like, but again, it was a great fun talk to be involved with. Yeah. I won't play all of the famous Lumiere Brothers movie. We played it in a number of times in that previous talk. Yeah, but amazing to think that, you know, there's that mythic story that everyone ran out of the cinema because they thought the train was going to hit them because they hadn't never really seen a movie before. And Then like I said, in going back to some of these modules, we added some new things. And so when we redid the character concept part 1 and 2 in October, the reason Frankenstein is there is because we added pose and movement as two key important things to think about when designing a character. And like I say, the reason we chose Frankenstein is because Jacob Elordi, in that role, his physical movement is probably one of the best things about the character, embodying the character's history and its birth, and it's one of the best things about the whole film. Then we had towards the end of the month, we reviewed Jan's great adventure in Pocket Gamer Helsinki and all the indies he'd met, and some of the students that we met who have now started their careers. And that was a great talk. And then, like I say, we went back and looked at the pose and animation in the concept design part 2. And then last month we finished our Accelerate program. We looked at some of the risks around VR development in 2025 and what 2026 could hold for VR, and where there might be some business opportunities and commercial and opportunities in that space. We said goodbye to some really great fun VR companies that have fallen in the last 5 years. And then we were in Helsinki meeting students and meeting our university stakeholders and forging the future of the course next year. We had a great time, great meeting everybody and in person, and we created some great new content that we will share around that in the coming weeks. And then we'd run Accelerate twice this year until we went into the autumn school. Autumn school, we tried to make it better than summer school, reacting to feedback, and we went and did further bigger deliveries and deliverables. We didn't just do a one-page concept deliverable, we did Amy's full business deliverable, and it was a great week. More time working together than the summer school, and we moved through a lot of the modules, and I felt people really responded to it, and that it was a really great thing that we had embarked on. And then this month, and we're only halfway through, aren't we? But we'd done Deeper, we had Nicole, Cameron, Alex, other great speakers. And in the background, I've been working on Lee, trying to, because again, he's a really busy guy, and got a great career with a lot of things on. And we managed to find a time where he was available and a format that would suited him. And, I was thrilled because we I'd like to have some more game art stuff on the course, and I was thrilled that he came and gave his talk, and then he had that moment in the talk where, because he did this shot, he did the last shot on the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot movie. He mentioned, hadn't he? He'd mentioned that he didn't know that Leonard Nimoy was going to be on it, and so as a thank you, you'll see, I added that into the video.
Honestly, I still can't believe I managed to do this. This is the final shot from the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie from 2009, and I'd always loved the design of the Enterprise. I think it's the most gorgeous looking ship that's ever been designed, and I got to light and render this, which was just unbelievable. And what I didn't know was going to happen was that Leonard Nimoy was going to do the voiceover of Space, the Final Frontier. That no one told us that was going to happen. So when I went to watch the movie for the first time, and I saw my shot on the big screen, and I heard Leonard Nimoy going, "Space, the Final," I just burst out crying. It was just unbelievable. Yeah, couldn't believe it.
Take us out. Aye, aye, Captain.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
I mean, that could be you. And I wanted to put that into that talk to kind of showcase that. You know, he started out loving games and movies and sci-fi and just doing his drawings. He got on a course, he met some people, he worked really hard, he got some opportunities, and then, you know, look what he's achieved. Look what he's achieved. And you know, that doesn't, we haven't even touched on all of his work on Halo and Halo Infinite. Yeah. So it's great, very, very inspirational. And then very, very different talk, but like inspirational in equal measure for very different ways. Yesterday we had Andrew, didn't we? Andrew in professor of kind of AI, and I'd spoken to him earlier in the year and said, look, you know, we have these talks and it's a fascinating field and it's going to change game development. So we have to tackle it head on. But, you know, we can't find someone that can explain under the hood, you know, who can actually, like I can explain how to animate something well and the principles of it to any student, or the principles of a narrative, or how to build a model. And Matt can tell you how to code. We can't find anybody that can tell you how it is done. And that was his challenge. And I mean, I'm not sure whether anyone here went to this talk. He did brilliantly. And I include this moment from his talk yesterday, you know, where, you know, he went through it step by step. You know, what is the machine doing to generate the outcome that it comes up with when after, you know, a user puts the prompt in. Yeah. And so I'm working on this now, and this talk will go live before Christmas. And if you missed it, this is one of the talks I was happiest with. Brilliant. And I said to Jan that this guy's an interesting guy, and we'll have to get him back in the new year for like part 2. And you know, I'm really, really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that. So that's the year end and how we've got to today. And you can see, I'll come to internships in a little bit. You can see what we've achieved, the different threads we've worked in, the different areas we've pushed and improved in. And it gives you an indication of where we're going to go. We're going to release them first-person shooter modules. We're going to start the internships. We're going to run some of the challenges and some of the community events again. And, you know, I know Matt and I have been talking, like we've loved building the modules and working with the community. And that's been great. But we're going to go and make some games now. And so we're thinking about how we will achieve that and how that work will generate new interactions with students and new content for students to study. Yeah. Okay.